All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Rogue Deck Chronicles. It's been a while, but my name is John, and sitting across from me here is Dean.
Hello, everyone.
So, sorry for the hiatus. We had some things going on. Obviously, I had my procedure, so I am back here. Dean was able to do a solo episode by himself. Thank you very much, Dean, for taking that on. But I'm back. I'm good. Apparently my voice sounds a little bit different, but not that much, so...
You're just less nasally.
Well,
that's all it is.
Yeah, well, I mean, the procedure was on my nose, so...
That's true.
Kind of glad that worked out well there. But last week was also elections, so we took the week off just to kind of have that happen for us here in the U.S., so... Yeah, but we are back. We have a lot to talk about today.
Yeah, being off a couple weeks, a lot has happened, both in the greater Pokemon community and also with us. Like, with us playing, too.
Yep. So, for today's agenda, we're going to go over the Pocket release. Both of us have been playing on that a little bit. We have some thoughts that we'd like to discuss about that. We're going to take a look at the Buenos Aires results and see how that what happened there. Anything interesting there? Also, Pokemon released an update that for the regional tournaments that is going to take effect for the San Antonio, Sacramento. It was started with an S. I was close. Sacramento regional. That is a little bit interesting. The way they worded that update kind of put some interesting thoughts into play, so we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about a challenge that I recently played in, and Dean was the actual professor and judge for. We'll talk about our predictions for LAIC, go into some trivia, and go into our rogue deck of the week. So that's our plan for the day. Let's go ahead and dive right in.
Everyone, buckle up.
So first, like I said, we're going to talk about Pocket. Dean, what are your thoughts? I mean...
I like Pokemon Pocket. It's actually a very well thought out game. The gameplay and all the fun activities, it was very well developed in my opinion. My only gripe with the game is if you're trying to do it free to play, like fully free to play, you cannot do competitive. It is so hard to get to that point. I've been playing it since the release, and I don't even have a competitive deck to even finish the solo missions.
Yeah, I kind of feel in the same way. I mean, I did do the first month of the paid version just to see what else I could draw, because I really like the cards. Like, the cards, in my opinion, are great. I love the artwork. I love the collecting aspect of it. It really makes it fun to collect. From a programming perspective, I think they could have done more, but that's also because I'm a programmer, so
yeah,
that for me is a little bit... What I wish they would have done is merged Live and Pocket. I wish they could have done a merge of that. And I know that they just released the updated version of Live, 2 years ago? So, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. So, it's still fairly new. But from a professor perspective, I think it's setting up people for failure if they want to move from Pocket to actual TCG and be competitive.
Yeah.
I think it's going to set up horrible habits. It's not giving them the same kind of gameplay. And if people just want to play that and it becomes its own new thing, like let's say that at regionals all of a sudden we start having TCG, video game, Go, and Pocket, cool. If that's how they're going to take that, cool. But the way that they're marketing it seems very counterintuitive, in my opinion, of, oh, look, this is a new way to play the TCG, but it's not really the TCG.
Yeah, I will say they did make an announcement, and they made sure people were aware these are two completely different games,
right,
that just have similar characteristics. So, like, one example is the energy. You don't have energy in Pocket. It's from an energy zone. But you can still, like, manipulate the energy like you do in the TCG with cards like Misty, cards like Brock.
Right.
So you still have that, but then like you can't attach your first turn, but you can support your first turn. And then you can actually attack your first turn if you find a way to get the energy on your Pokemon, which right now the only way is through using a Misty card.
Right.
And you have to get like super lucky with your flips.
Right.
Which I saw a meme of someone getting like 216 heads in a row.
Which is it like that's one thing I've also noticed in the gameplay that I don't necessarily like is the randomization is not true randomization. Like, every single time I roll a heads, I get multiple heads.
Mm-hmm.
Or, like, 5 or 6 heads. Or, if I get a tails, then everything is tails. Like, it's very rare that I get all... Like, I think I was playing, like, a lightning deck, so I can't remember exactly what I was doing with it. But I had to flip, like, 3 or 4 coins, and it was either they're always all heads or all tails.
Yeah.
Like, it's never really a true... 50-50 split.
Yeah, it is definitely unique. I do like how simple the competitive game is. Like when you play an opponent, when you're actually playing the actual cards. I like how simple it is, how straightforward it is. It still is. There's still strategy and there is still some foresight involved, but it's not some over the top way of playing the game. The games do last only like 10 minutes at max, and I do like that.
So yeah, that's our thoughts on Pocket. I mean, not a lot there. There's still more that has to develop. We're only in the first set there, so I think more has to come out for us to truly be able to give a true review on it.
And there's no trading yet either.
No.
That's going to be released soon, I know that.
So there's some stuff we gotta figure out.
Ironic enough that we have 2 trading card games digitally, and we can't trade in either of them. Just saying.
Right? Like...
the Pokemon trading card game.
Again, as a programmer, I'm sitting here going, ah. But anyways. So, that's our thoughts on Pocket. Next, we have the Buenos Aires special event. I'm just going to sit here and say, not surprised.
Yeah. I will say I like the international representation in the top 8.
Agreed. There's a decent breakdown there.
Like, it's all the top players, like, no surprise. It's still a special event. It's even though there's only like 200 people that attended, it was
280.
80. Also, okay, 280. There's still really good players. And one person I want to really put a spotlight on is Giovanni Sasso.
Right.
This is his 3rd top finalist appearance in a row.
Yeah, he's doing really well.
Every South American regional or Latin American regional we've had, he's either got first or second. And he's a first-year master.
Yeah.
So that's really impressive. He may be fighting the top LATAM player spot with Vinny.
Yeah, it definitely is going to be a a run for the money, I think, this year for the LATAM, which is nice because I feel like LATAM has not had a lot of, I don't want to say competitiveness, but that's the only way that I can kind of put it is competitiveness lately with those top players. Like I actually like how like with Europe, you have Tord, you have Stefan Ivanov, you have a couple top names that are actually like really
everyone knows who they are regardless of what region you're in.
That, but also like it I don't want to say that it's like a fan base following of like people rooting for them to be the top one at the end of the year, but it kind of feels that way. Is like we all have certain people that we were like, oh, we really want that person to end up like towards the top of the leaderboard for that region. And I feel like LATAM has been kind of out of the mix there with that.
It's been forgotten.
Yeah, and so it's nice to see that here.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of those players don't travel as much compared to the other players in other regions. Like, as you see in Buenos Aires, there's 2 Australian players that made top 8. Those, and I get it why. They don't really have a lot of events to go to, so they have a bigger incentive to be more international when they do their regional runs. Jeremy Gamela won. He is an American player. But everyone else is, like, the names we've seen before, Fabrizio Silva, Giovanni Sasso. Like, LATAM has really good players. They just don't travel as much, so you don't really hear their reputation compared to, like you said, Tord, Savan Ivanov, Robin, the Schultz brothers, even American players, because they don't travel.
Right. So I think that is, especially with the way that the new build up to Worlds and the qualifications of Worlds, I think that's causing it in and of itself to be more competitive that way. So it's driving these more competitive natures, which is really, in my opinion, fun. But I'm also a competitive person, so. And
correct me if I'm wrong, this is the first special event outside of Europe, right? For the season? Or have we had another one?
No, there was another one in LATAM earlier.
Okay, because I was going to say, because now all special events, if you win, you get your Worlds invite versus last season.
There was Lima, Peru in October.
Gotcha. Yeah, so like now Jeremy Gamila has his World invite.
Right.
And if we did this last year, he would have just got a bunch of points.
Right.
So there's a big difference on going to these special events now compared to last season, too.
Right. Oh, we didn't talk about this last time either because we had so much going on. Gdansk happened.
That's right.
We forgot about Gdansk. So we'll talk about Buenos Aires here real quick. It was 280 players. As we said, Jeremy Gamila won. He was playing the Palkia Dust Noir. Giovanni Sasso has been piloting the Terrapagos for a while and been doing really well with it, so he got second with the Terrapagos build. What I really like here in our top 8 is we're really seeing a decent meta. Like, we're not seeing just the same deck every single time. It is a decent, like, third was Lost Zone, fourth was Raging Bolt, fifth was Miraidon, then we got a Snorlax Stall. We do have a duplicate Terrapagos there, but that's...
But even then, I think they played 2 different builds. Giovanni Sasso is known not to play the Boufflons, and I know Tim Franklin had the Boufflons in his list.
Okay.
So like, there's the defense-heavy Terrapagos versus the more aggressive attacking Terrapagos.
Right.
Which you could just characterize as 2 different decks in itself, too.
Yeah, I mean, even though they're both the Terrapagos Dust Noir, they're 2 separate ways of playing it, so I'll agree with that. And then we also had Guardy. Mm-hmm. So that's our rounding our top 8. Unfortunately, we still don't have a lot of the deck lists. We only have 4 out of the top 8 deck lists up on Limitless, so we can't really go too far into it.
Day 2 was only 22 players.
Yeah,
because of how the special event ran. So
yeah, it's interesting. But if we go into Gdansk, there we go. We see that we had just shy of 1,400 players. We still see Reggie Drago coming out on top there. We see Tord piloting the Terrapagos Dust Noir getting second. But then we see, again, a Reggie Drago, but then we see a weird Banette Gardevoir deck making 4th and 5th. And then we see Iron Thorns. So
yeah, it's
a weird meta, but it's interesting there. I did not think we would see Banette Gardevoir make such a big comeback, but
I'm not surprised because Poland loves their Banette.
That's true.
And one of the players is Polish, is Mateus, who has actually been playing this deck for a while, from my understanding.
Right.
My big thing is the Iron Thorns. That came out of nowhere.
Has it, though? I mean, Quad Thorns won Worlds, so...
It was a 1% meta share in the whole entire tournament, and yes, 2 in the top 8. I want to shout out Steve Lawson.
I mean, if you take a look at it, Drago abilities, Terrapagos abilities, Gardevoir abilities.
Oh no, I'm not saying it's bad.
Shuts it down.
It's a great call. It's just everyone doesn't respect it, And then you get someone like Steve Lawson, which if you haven't heard his story, he's a Poke parent that just went to this regional because his kid plays Pokemon, and he gets top 8 at a regional,
which is insane. Like, so it's really cool. But if we take a look, we see some Charizard. We see Ogerpon Mimikyu, which is awesome. We see my string cheese man, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit, because he gets better, and I'm so happy.
I played against a Godango deck last night with my cloth. It was weird. They weren't playing a regular Godango. They had the new Mesprit and some other techs in there. It was weird.
I'm raising my eyebrow as high as it can go right now. Like,
I don't know why either.
Why?
It made no sense. But Gouging Fire, there's 3 that made day 2.
Yeah. Like, that was a cool I did get to tune in and see that get played, and that was an interesting deck to see there.
Yeah, the person you probably watched play it, I think he got all his points so far this season playing that deck.
Yeah. I was, to be honest, I hate to do this, but it was nice to not see Lugia in the top for a while. We do see a Chen Pao. Chen Pao finished higher than the top placing Lugia.
I was about to say the same thing.
Like,
Lugia
that
fell off.
Which is insane, considering what our local meta is and how many people are still playing Lugia, which annoys me so much.
To be fair, Lugia has dropped off in our local area too. You weren't at the last challenge. No one played it.
At Coliseum?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I apparently still hit it every single time we're at For Honor, though, so we'll talk about that. But, anywho, so that was Gdansk. I mean, pretty decent meta share there, which is nice. I mean, that's something that you and I have been talking about being frustrated about for a while now, is that majority of what we've been seeing is this constant top deck of the format just consistently being played. First it was Zard for a while, then it was Guardy for a while, Lugia for a while, then Drago, and so the fact that we're getting a decent meta breakdown where it's no matter what you're playing, you have a decent shot, I really like that. That's what I love about Pokemon, is because, like, it's frustrating when you see that and then you look at, like, the video game. And yes, the video game, you're normally going to have some key staple Pokemon.
Yeah.
But with a team of 6, you have such a variety to put in and out. So seeing those different teams, seeing how they play out and who's going to have the different techs for what, that was kind of cool. And then to see that the same decks in TCG, it's like, you got to play this or you're not going to have fun. Like, that's not fun to me.
Yeah, I like how the last couple tournaments, the diversity of Top Cut has been there. It's been awesome. And kind of like you said, like in VGC, a lot, like, yes, there are some Pokemon that are staples, and they've gone a long way since probably, I think, Black and White era, where it was chalk, which is the same. Every team ran the same 5 Pokemon, and you had that one unique Pokemon. Yeah. Now it's more diverse, and we're seeing that with the trading card game. It used to be that triangle. Now it's like an octagon, or really no shape at all. If you're a decent enough player and you know your outs, you can make a good run at any tournament.
Yep. But speaking of Top Cut, I think that's a good transition into the next thing. Mm-hmm. So for those of you who haven't seen, we're going to put the link in the show descriptions here. There was an update that was released here towards the 2025 Championship Series, and Pokemon officially released this on November 11th, so as of time of recording yesterday. Mm-hmm. And so they've been asking people to give feedback on how things are going. And one of the things that we have talked about that they reintroduced this season was the asymmetric top cut at regional level. And so a couple of people have been making comments of, like, we used to play 15 rounds of Swiss before top cut, and it was reduced to 12 rounds for tournaments of the same size. And so people are complaining that they're paying the same amount, but they're getting less rounds of Pokemon.
And even the day 2, you're only playing 4 rounds now, which is dramatically less.
Right. Instead of playing 6, you're playing 4. Instead of playing 9, you're normally playing... On day 1, you're playing
8, yeah.
So you are getting less. And I completely understand that. As a competitor, I want to play the most amount of rounds of Pokemon I can.
Especially if you spend $80 to play in the tournament.
I agree with that. But taking a step back as someone who also does analysis for business operations, I can understand why they're doing that. Because you and I, when we were at Orlando, we left what? We left top 4. That's when we left the Orlando tournament. The top 4 was going on.
And that was like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock.
Right. And we had been there all day.
Yeah.
So we also have to remember there are time constraints at these convention centers because convention centers still have conventions going on during the week.
Mm-hmm.
So we have time constraints. And people got to tear down everything that's happening there. You got to tear down the stages. You got to tear down all that. You have a time limit for when you have to be out of those convention halls. So adding in asymmetrical top cut, that adds more rounds that you have to play before you even start normal top cut. Mm-hmm. So something had to give, which was the amount of rounds that we're playing.
Which I think they explained well in the article.
Right.
We have opinions about the article and what was said, but I think that was one good thing they did do well was the explanation of like, this is why we went to lower amounts because of the time constraints with the tournament halls and being part of a team that staff a regional. I can see because we had that pressure as floor judges,
right,
to get the rounds done as quickly as possible. We were timed,
right. And so, kind of going off what you're saying here, they did acknowledge that there was a total amount of reduction in the total number of Swiss rounds in Phase 1, quote-unquote, Day 1, which conflicts with what was desired. And that's the first time that I've heard them go Phase 1, Day 1. And that's really key because later on in the article, they state that with the time constraints, considering the aforementioned venue time constraints, this has resulted in the need of number of rounds of Phase 1 of Swiss Day 1 to be reduced from 15 to 12 for divisions with 1,025 to 2,048 competitors. I don't know if this is a translation error. I don't know what this is. We've never played 15 rounds in Day 1. The max we've ever played is 9.
I think it's someone didn't proofread this right.
Probably not.
We played 15 rounds total. I played 15 rounds in Charlotte last year between day 1 and day 2.
So if they meant Phase 1, meaning Phase 1 Swiss rounds, Day 1, Day 2 combined, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But this has been a problem that I have had with Pokemon with their updates, is there's been multiple updates that they've put out that haven't necessarily either explained everything fully or there's been miscommunication or whatnot, and it seems like this is a consistent problem with TPCI of communication, that somebody isn't fully proofreading or something, and stuff's getting put out which can confuse players. Mm-hmm. Because I know in our group, we had miscommunications on understanding what was going on with this update just in ourselves.
Yeah, and not all of us are that connected to the competitive community like you and me. We have people that are kind of more fringe, and if they're reading this article, they're expecting what TPCI is saying to be truthful at face value versus like, okay, we read it, it's like, okay, that's a typo, you mean 15 rounds for both days. But someone that's either brand new or just doesn't have their pulse,
their hand on the pulse of
there
what's going on.
It's late.
Yeah, no. I got what you're saying.
They'll get this misinterpretation.
Right. And so I get where they're going with this. So with the update, what they're saying is that some people are also complaining that the whole point of Day 2 was if we get to Day 2 then we should have an equal chance of being able to get into Top Cut. That's always been the thing, is like, if you make day 2 and you go undefeated, you have as good of a chance as everybody else to get into Top Cut.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily the case anymore because of the point constraint and how many rounds you have.
And we saw that with Louisville. That was kind of the tip of the iceberg. There were several players that went 4-0 in Louisville
on day 2,
and they were out of contention
because they had one loss.
Two losses.
So
anyone that went X2, they didn't even have a shot at Top Cut.
Right.
With how the top players and in their records, because people went X1-1.
Right.
And that was enough for a straight top 8.
Right. And so now what they're saying is that in order to give more choice to players to continue competing, even if they've already lost too many rounds to make Top Cut, we are lowering the required number of Swiss match points to qualify for Phase 2, Day 2 by 2 points. This will go into effect as of November 17th for TCG and VGC competitions, which means it will not impact LAIC, but it will impact the Sacramento Regionals.
Which is the next week, yep.
Correct. Now, in my opinion, this doesn't fix the issue of Top Cut. Does it fix the issue that people get to play more rounds? Yes, I will agree with that, because you're now giving a larger percentage of people the possibility of making day 2 to give them 4 more rounds the next day.
Mm-hmm.
I will 100% agree with that statement. However, the fact that they're bringing up the comment of making it to Top Cut and then saying, oh, well, we're going to fix that by... The way the article came across was that it's like, oh, we're making this easier for people. Okay, you just lowered what I need to get into day 2 by 2 points. That means I can get a tie now. Instead of going X2, I can go X2-1.
Yeah. So it's making... Basically, we're going back to last season.
How does that help me get to Top Cut if I go undefeated the next day? It doesn't.
If the top number is X11 again. Yeah, it doesn't do anything.
It doesn't help me.
But on the flip side of that, it incentivizes players to try to go for the higher pricing instead of being like getting top 256, top 128. You have a chance to get top 16, top 32, and get the cash pricing.
That, and also get higher points towards the actual competitive nature of finishing top 125. So, if they had explained that a little bit better in the article, I would have no qualms with what this article was.
Yeah.
But the way that they're presenting this information as a professor, as a competitive player, I'm sitting here going, I get what you're trying to put out. You're just not putting it out there like that.
Yeah, and I read, as soon as I figured out like what it really said and I digested it, a player like me, who I'm not the best player. I'm not gunning to win a tournament.
Right.
Like at a regional level. Yes, my goal is to win, yes. But like I am not a top 1% player.
Right.
If you look in the standings, I'm a top maybe 80% player right now because I haven't done well in my locals. But like I'm at that bubble of like I can make day 2 and I cannot make day 2. So if you give me an easier way to get into day 2, it gives me a more incentive to try to get like top 32, top 64, or even for me, getting top 128 would be a better goal than what I ended off last season.
Right.
Which means I can get either more prizing, more money. It's something to achieve. But if you're a top 1% player, this means nothing and actually doesn't fix anything. Because you're still trying...
for the top 1% could make it worse.
Exactly.
Because now you've got... Because with that, a lot of people were trying to build decks that don't tie. Except for people playing Snorlax Stall, which I don't understand. But... I will never understand that. But people were trying to make decks that didn't tie. Now that you can possibly have X2-1 and get in, there's more potential for day 2 decks to be tying decks. And that's going to mess with people. Mm-hmm. So it now creates this new thought process that these top 1% players have to rethink about again now, which may impact the meta share. We don't know.
We may see more Lost Box and Guardian because they were not saying they were tying a lot. It's because they were slower decks and went to time a lot.
Right.
Which made more natural ties.
Right. And so we're going to see. I mean, I think it's a step in the right direction. I don't know if it's a straightforward step. I don't know if it's maybe more a step cattywampusly, but yeah.
We'll see.
I know I just used cattywampus, and some people may not know that more diagonal of a direction. Sorry, my southern came out there for a second. But that's going to be what I think it's a step in the right direction for the overall competitive nature, but for the direction that they're wanting to push it towards of being truly competitive, we're going to see.
And to be clear, for the average player, for about 80% of the players, this changes nothing. It doesn't change how we do day one. You're still playing the same amount of rounds. It's just your goal for day one to go into day two has changed a little bit.
All right, so that was the update that Pokemon put out this week. Next, we're going to talk about the challenge that happened 2 weeks ago. I played in. Dean was the professor/judge for that tournament.
Mm-hmm.
We had 7 masters and 1
Senior.
So yeah, it was a fun tournament. I ended up getting second.
Mm-hmm.
String Cheese Man is really bringing me home here this season so far. So I got to replace a 8th place finish with a 2nd place, which is great. So now I believe I calculated it out to over 81?
Something like that.
It was 81 or 82 challenge points, so or championship points. So slowly getting to my goal of 100, but yay. So I think I'll just go through all of my rounds, and we'll talk about that. And then I know there was a couple key calls that you had to make, so I think it'd be cool to talk about it from a professor perspective from the tournament, because you haven't... Actually, neither one of us, up until this point, have actually judged a tournament while we've been doing the podcast.
Before this challenge, the last time I actually judged a challenge was probably Orlando.
Right. So it's been a while. So I think it'd be cool to talk about it from your perspective as being the professor for the actual challenge here. So my first round, I went up against a Regidrago. It was interesting because I think... Did I go first? I went first. No, I went second. I did go second, and I got everything set up and ready to go. I had a bunch of Gimagools down. I had my Bidoof down. And then all of a sudden, the next turn, he was able to get... what's the... Oh, gosh, I'm drawing a blank here. The newer thing for Drago that can do 110 damage.
Kyurem.
Kyurem, yes, thank you. He was able to get Kyurem into the discard. And I'm sitting there like, oh no, there goes 3 of my Gimmighoul. Oh no. And then he decides to Dragapult with Drago. And I'm like, okay. And then we had an interesting discussion because he was just trying to say, well, I'm putting 60 damage on your Bidoof. And I'm like, well, Bidoof doesn't take damage while on the bench because I was playing the 60 HP that has that.
The Carefree counter.
The Carefree, yeah. So that was a call that you had to get involved in because I knew what he was trying to do, but I wanted him to know that he was wording it incorrectly because he just kept saying, well, it's an effect of the attack. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. I don't take damage if you're just saying it's effective of an attack.
Yeah, and I guess I can interject here because one thing that we want players to understand from a judging perspective and also just as a player perspective, player to player, there is a difference between damage and damage counters, and you have to know what you're saying because you can lead your opponent off the wrong path by saying, oh, this is what it is, especially with Regidrago, where he may not have the card in front of you because it may be in the middle of your discard pile. So unless your opponent's reading what the effect is, they may not know that it's damage counters.
Right, and I eventually I knew that it was damage counters, but I was still playing... I hate to say that I was playing naive. I was playing naive a little bit because I wanted him to actually get the card and show No, it's damage counters.
And that's the responsibility of the player playing the deck. You have to know what your cards do and the right terminology to use.
Right.
Because you can, and I guess it's a little bit of a pet peeve on a judging perspective, that people are like, oh, I'm going to Dragapult, or oh, I'm going to Goodra when you have an attack like Regidrago V-Star, where you're copying an attack. Well, you can't just say, oh, I'm going to Dragapult you.
Yeah.
What attack?
Which attack, exactly.
You got to tell me exactly, because I can assume you're doing your headbutt. Cool, I'll take, 30, 60, whatever damage it is. It's like nothing.
Right.
So you have to be specific in your terminology and what you are saying.
Right.
Coming from a professor, because it helps make our calls easier.
Yep. So with that, because he only did the Dragapult attack or the Phantom Dive instead of actually using Kyurem and doing the Trifrost, I was able to actually survive with 3 Gimagools instead of going down to 1.
Yeah.
So I was able to come back and take the game later because he was able to get 2 prizes off of that, and then I just started... I had 2 Goldango in hand off the Iono that he gave me before he Phantom Dived, and then I top decked the 3rd Goldango.
Oh, nice.
So it was literally coin bonus, coin bonus, coin bonus, coin bonus, coin bonus.
Yeah.
Pheasantipity. So just draw half my deck next turn. So that was that one. The next round, I hit a Raging Bolt. And I got extremely lucky that round. The amount of Sadas and the amount of Bravery Charms and other support, like the amount of things that he Pokestopped away, I was just like, I think he Pokestopped away 2 Sadas and at the very least 1 Raging Bolt. Hey all you rogues out there, we just wanted to take a quick second to say thank you to our sponsor, For Honor and Glory. They are a great support to us and have all the things you need related to Pokemon, Magic, D&D, Warhammer, and more. You can go over to forhonorandglory.com and use discount code ROGUE24. That's discount code ROGUE24 at forhonorandglory.com for 10% off your entire online order. All right, let's get back to talking about those sneaky decks.
It sounds bad, but if it's early enough in the game...
Oh, no, it's mid-game.
That's so bad then.
Yeah.
Because, unless you're saving your recovery cards, that's awkward. Rather you do it, or in the beginning, like the first, your first or second Pokestop.
And I think he prized his Pal Pad.
Oh, your recovery. That's important.
Yeah.
That's why you play him.
Yeah, I think it was one of his last ones. So I was.
Feel bad.
I was able to come back. I felt bad. I was like, I kept sitting there, and he's just like, "This is just not great." And I'm like, "No, it's not. I'm sorry." So that put me 2-0, and then I ended up hitting Lugia the 3rd round, and that was just he literally was able to get double Archeops in turn 2. And then it was just, I could not get set up.
He is a world competitor.
Yeah,
so
I know.
we can take that.
I know, but still. So, and then because of resistance, our friend Jesse, I ended up bubbling him out of top 2.
Yeah.
So
and I think only top 2 got points.
Only top 2 got points because it was only 7 of us. If there was 8 of us, top 4 would have. So I felt bad. But that's the game. Name of the game, and so I now have a 1st, a 2nd, a 4th, and an 8th place. So I want to replace that last 8th place. So that way
you got next week.
Wait, did I? Wait, did I replace both 8th places? I can't remember at this point. I don't know, but I'm sitting at 81 or 82 championship points, so close to that goal. All I got to do is top cut another cup, and I'm good.
Yeah.
And I'll hit my goal for 100. Yep. I might have to reevaluate my goals here.
I am nowhere near close to my goals, so...
But so that's that. So I know you had a couple besides the call for my game in round 1. I know that you had a couple of interesting calls that you had to do.
Yeah, so 2 of them were against actually in the same match. There wasn't really a lot of calls I had to do. Actually, no, to back up. I did have to give a slow play warning to a player. I understood why, because I talked to him, and I was watching the game, and I gave him my sympathy. I was like, I get it, man. I actually played against that same player with the same deck, which we will talk about later. Hint. And it's a tough matchup, but I told him, like, you have to be cognizant of how long you're thinking between turns, because luckily we have a timer at our shop, and I'm literally staring at the timer and timing his actions because I have to at this point. He's taking forever. But I also understood he is a newer player, so I was giving him some grace, and I knew that his opponent, I knew the opponent had the game. I can't say it, but you can see the writing on the walls.
Yeah.
So I talked to him afterwards, and then the next match, I had to give another warning about slow play to someone else. And then one call I had to do, I had to give a prize penalty. The player declared Legacy Star. Nothing wrong with that. But then looked at his deck.
Instead of...
Just discard. Yeah, so what Legacy Star says is that you discard the top 7 cards of your deck. And then whatever cards are in your discard pile, you can choose to put 2 back in your hand. Well, I think he was anxious. He was trying to get out of a predicament. So he Legacy started and just picked up his deck and started going through. I'm like, hey man, you gotta stop. He was like, what do you mean? Like, you declared Legacy Star, you're doing an illegal deck search. He's like, and you can see he's like, oh
yeah.
I'm like, it's gonna be a double prize penalty. And I looked over to his opponent's board. He only had 2 prizes left.
Oh no!
So it meant the game was over.
That's
because I was about to I'm going to judge shuffle, and then the guy was like, hey, it's like, I'm looking over like, oh, he's like, yeah. I don't mean to win like this, but that's game. I'm like, sorry, man. It's a game.
Yeah.
So just, it goes back to knowing what your deck does, knowing all your attacks and all the abilities in your deck. If it is an expectation that if you go to a sanctioned event that you know what at least your deck does.
Yep.
So be prepared. Not saying you have to know every line and everything word for word, but it helps make my calls a lot easier, and also helps with your gameplay and your overall experience better.
Yep. So that was a challenge. It was fun. Was at our sponsor shop for Honor and Glory, so it was a lot of fun there. Next, we're going to talk about predictions for LAIC. I have one prediction, because this is Surging Sparks. So I actually have 2 predictions. No. Surging Sparks isn't legal for LAIC?
No. Surging Sparks not legal until next week.
I thought it was legal this week.
No, it's not.
Ew.
This is actually a big, not topic of this, but this is the first time at an IC where a new set isn't being introduced. This is actually the last tournament of the Stellar Crown format.
Okay. I could have sworn it was going to be legal, but okay.
It just came out last week.
That's right. I've just, because of pre-releases and everything in the surgery, I've been so off of things. Okay. So then I need to rethink about my prediction. So go with yours first.
So I don't really think much is going to change. I'm hoping that there's some creativity, especially with this being the last Stellar Crown, and it's also the best of the best going to this tournament. It's not like another regional where like, okay, we'll still have good players, but then we'll have like, it's the top players from every region going to Sao Paulo and playing. So I'm hoping for some creativity. I think a single prize deck will do pretty well. I'm not sure what. My heart wants to say Cloth, but I know Cloth is probably not the play for this. Ogie Dogie made an appearance at Gdansk. The Lost Box is coming back. Heck, if the right player can pilot it, maybe that the single prize Ursaluna with the Iron Valiant EX, where you place damage counters and then you do it based on
Oh, yeah.
So I'm hoping that a single prize deck comes out of nowhere and does well. I'm not saying it's going to make top 8, but I want it to make talks of the tournament. So that's one of my predictions and hopes. Other than that, I just want to see something get top 8 that we haven't seen in a while. Whether it be the Gouging Fire that people are talking about, maybe Goldango.
I was going to say, here, Goldango's my call.
Yeah. Especially if Yella is there.
Yella better be there. But
So with Goldango and Gouging Fire, I was listening to Uncommon Energy today because they released their episode early. And Azul said, like, if Luke Kirkham, who's the Gouging Fire player, and Yella, the Goldango player, if they're at LAIC, they're going to make up 50% of whatever those decks are for top that make day 2. So I thought that was funny because it's probably going to be true.
Yep.
Those are great players, and they have mastered those decks.
That's like I'm saying, like I feel like I was stupid to switch to Chien-Pao for Orlando because Goldango I should have been playing it all along for the last year.
Yeah. Well, now you know you're crushing it with Goldango now, and
exactly
with getting that Energy Search Pro.
Oh my god!
So I have it for you as soon as it gets in the mail. It's yours. You and me talked about it. I ordered some cards for Toronto. I'm playing in that regional next month, so I'm doing my grind now, trying to figure out what deck I want to play. So, but that's next format. We're just talking about LAIC format.
Yep. So it's going to be interesting. Definitely going to tune in as much as possible this weekend. But
well, it starts Friday, so if you're not doing much, I know I'm fortunate to where I work from home, so sometimes I just have it on the TV in the background.
I'm unfortunately teaching a course Friday. But anyways, so next we have trivia. So who's going first this time?
I can ask you first.
Okay.
So this one may be hard, but I've actually was thinking about this one for a couple weeks. And I just forgot about it until we were talking beforehand. I'm like, oh yeah, we need trivia. I'm like, oh yeah, I was actually wondering about this Pokemon fact. So my question to you is, for 1,000 points.
Not 1,000 points. It's 3 points.
What is the name of Professor Cooey's and Professor Burnett's child in Sun and Moon?
You picked the one era that I know nothing about. I'm just going to throw out a stupid guess and say Moana.
No, not Moana.
I don't know, so we're going to go with Kike.
No, but that's actually a good guess.
Kue. I don't know.
No. So it's Lei. Lei.
Oh, that makes sense.
I actually didn't know until I looked it up.
That makes sense.
Because in the anime, they talk about it. But
yeah, that is like the one era of the anime that I missed.
But it's such a brief interaction because they didn't really talk about like her being pregnant or anything. It's like, we're having a baby, and all of a sudden the baby is there. And then the baby was in for like maybe 5 seconds.
Gotcha. All right. So, completely missed on that one on my part. All right. So, for you, which is the only Pokemon that has the special ability to devolve?
I had you read this before. In lore, it said that Slowbro has the ability to devolve if the shelter on its tail detaches, which will make it from a Slowbro back to a Slowpoke.
Yes.
However, in the game and all that, that's impossible. That never happens. But that is what it says in lore.
Yep. Because its tail being bit by the shelter evolves it from Slowpoke to Slowbro. So if it is removed, it effectively devolves it.
Yes.
Cool. You got another 3 points.
I know way too much. So I used to be obsessed with Pokemon trivia when I first got back into it. I started watching all the YouTubers that did. One of them was Birdkeeper Toby. I love watching his stuff. He's not really around anymore, but he had this series called the Evolution series, and he talked about like the Pokemon Tree of Life, and I just went head first into all that for like a good 2 years. So, do use that
hyperfixation much?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, and when I used to have a job where like I'm like setting up something and I'm just waiting for hours on end. I had to do something, so I just watched a bunch of YouTube videos. So
there you go.
But yeah, my obsession.
All right, so I think you're up to 15 and I'm at 3.
I'll try to give you some easy ones.
You just happen to pick the stuff that I have no idea about, but that's okay.
Half the time I'm picking stuff that interests me. Like, I was thinking about, like, oh yeah, the baby from Sun and Moon. What was the baby's name? Oh, that's a good piece of trivia to ask that no one will probably know. But it's great content.
Sure. All right. So last but not least, is always the Rogue Deck of the Week. And Dean, you have more experience with this than I do. I unfortunately have not been able to get on live for the past couple of days. But we had our friend Aaron, who was actually playing in the challenge last week that I was in. He played this deck, and he gave us permission to showcase it. So thank you very much, Aaron, for letting us talk about this. But Dean, you want to take it away?
Yeah, so I first encountered this deck by being one of Aaron's opponents at a challenge the week before that. He did beat me with it. I was playing my cloth deck. I'm supposed to have the advantage, but I just drew so poorly, and he was able to just get set up, and I couldn't come back from it. But what the deck is, actually have it in my Pokemon Live account as Aaron's deck. It's actually very straightforward. It is just Cornerstone Ogerpon with Mimikyu. That's it. Those are the only 4 Pokemon in your deck. And it's basically just a stall wall, but attacking deck. So it is very meta dependent. Because I tried practicing this before we talked about it, because we were going to talk about it last week before we had to postpone the episode. And all 3 of my matches were against decks that completely countered me.
Right.
Either they didn't play an ability or they weren't a multi-prize Pokemon.
Right.
So it just, you have to know if you're going to get, like, for a challenge, it's perfect. A cup, it's perfect because you're expected to go against Regidrago, Dragapult, Raging Bolt. Like, those are your stage.
Lugia.
You're going against VEX Pokemon, which that's when you play the Mimikyu. They can't attack you.
Right.
It's like, okay, if that's not going to work, what if I do... I'm trying to think, like, Charizard. Well, now you have the Ogerpon. You can't attack with any Pokemon with abilities. So it's supposed to completely block your opponent from really getting prizes from you. But what makes this different than most stall decks is that you're actually attacking. You play 4 DTE, 3 Mist Energy, 2 Fighting Energy, and 4 Psychic Energy. So your goal is to get energy on your Pokemon and take prize cards.
Yeah.
But it also has cards like Eerie. It has Luxurious Cape, Hero's Cape for tanking ability. You have... Or does it have Eerie? No, it doesn't have Eerie. I thought I did. But another way to win with this deck is deck out. Because you're forcing your opponent not to do anything. They can't attack. All they can do is maybe play around you if they can. But they're drawing. You're doing little damage. You're still attacking, but you're doing little damage. You're just hoping that they just run out of the resources.
Yeah.
And you play 3 pennies. So I'm like, okay, you're about to KO my Ogerpon. Penny, put it back down, completely heals the card.
Yep.
So I liked this build. It was very unique in the perspective for stall and control, because it does attack. I like that. It was very fun to play against. It made you think. If you're not used to a deck like this, it did help you. It made you work around your outs. So Aaron was very gracious when he played this deck, and I interviewed him after the challenge. And one thing he said that I really appreciated was, if you're choosing to play a control stall like deck, like this, like Snorlax, you cannot be that player that is rude about it. You have to be humble,
Right.
because players, you're probably going to be the only stall they'll ever see or rarely see.
Right, and playing against those is frustrating.
Yes.
It really is.
And he said, like, you have to be okay with getting that frustration.
Yeah.
Because they're not mad at you, they're mad at the deck.
Yeah.
It just so happened you're playing the deck. And I'll be honest, like, I'm not the biggest fan of these type of decks because it is frustrating to play against. That's why I like playing my cloth deck. I actually get around that for the most part. But a lot of people cannot. So if you do play this deck or a control stall-like deck, please be patient with your opponent. What they say is not against you. It's just when you're playing a competitive game, it's frustrating. They're just taking it out on you. And just be humble, be gracious, and just take the win and then console them.
But yeah, so that is our Rogue Deck of the Week. We'll definitely put that into the show notes like always. But that is everything I have. Dean, how about from your side?
I am good. I'm just excited to see how Surgeon Sparks come into play. We'll talk more about that next week as we have our first Surgeon Sparks regional. But right now, let's finish this format off strong with LAIC and just let's see how those top competitors do with this.
Goldingo for the win. But all right, keep having fun playing your sneaky decks through the seasons.
See ya, y'all.
Hey, all you rogues out there. We just wanted to take a quick second to shout out our sponsor and one of our home leagues at For Honor and Glory. They have all you need for your card game and TTRPG needs. Some upcoming events they have are on Saturday, October 5th, the TCG Monthly League Challenge. On Saturday, October 26th, the Monthly Video Game League Challenge. Saturday, October 26th, also a Surging Sparks TCG pre-release, as well as Sunday, October 27th, the Surging Sparks pre-release. And Sunday, October 27th, also the Pokemon Go Cup and Pokemon Go Challenge. Remember, you can always go over to forhonorandglory.com and use discount code ROGUE24. That's ROGUE24 at forhonorandglory.com to receive 10% off your entire online order. All right, have fun playing your sneaky decks.